Hi, folks. So today we're going to talk about something that can quietly hold people back um, when they're, trying to lose weight, when they're trying to improve their health and well-being, and it's something that can impact in many areas of your life. It's the idea that you need to feel ready before you actually take action. Um, Now, that can sound very reasonable when it shows up. And it'll come in different thoughts like I'll start properly when I feel more ready. I've just got to get my head into the right space. Next week, this is particularly in weight loss, of course, next week will be better. And on the surface, that can seem to make sense because we've been taught that in many ways we've got to be motivated first, and then from that motivation, action will follow. But what if it's the other way around? Now, readiness can feel like it's something solid. It feels like a point that you've arrived at. From there, everything's going to begin. Um, Everything will line up. We'll feel clear, motivated, certain. There's a quite a high degree of certainty in it. And then at that point, we're going to begin. But actually, if you look at experience, how often does that actually happen? See, because readiness isn't an object, it's a feeling. And like all feelings, it can move. So some days you feel up for everything, you're just ready to crack on. And then some days you don't. And in fact, that feeling can change within minutes. So if you're a, if you wait for a feeling that naturally comes and goes, you could actually end up waiting for quite a long time. And it could even look like procrastination to you. But really, what it is, it's an understanding of how change really works. Most meaningful change doesn't begin when everything feels perfect. More often than not, it begins when there's a sense of uncertainty. It can begin when things are messy, a bit unclear. Um, they can be uncomfortable. And that's important for you to see because if you believe you need to feel ready first, you're actually delaying the very thing that creates that feeling. So, an analogy I sometimes use is to think about this um, in the way of you're stepping into a cold swimming pool. Now, what happens is you stand on the edge, and if you're like me and other people I know, you seem to spend a long time thinking about it. You test the water, you pull back, you go again, you keep doing it. And your mind, if and actually it might be worth going to try it out, your mind will give you reasons for that. Like it's too cold, maybe later, or maybe I'm just going to ease in slowly. And the longer you stand there, the bigger the hesitation feels. But the moment you get into the water, something shifts and you'll actually feel it. Yeah, you might feel the coldness, but you'll quite quickly notice how the body starts to adjust. Your breathing changes. Everything about your system begins to settle. And within a very surprisingly short time, what started to by feeling uncomfortable actually becomes very manageable. Now, the interesting thing about that is nothing about the water has changed. What's changed was your experience of it. And that only changed because you moved. You did something about it. You were in action. Now, what would it be like if weight loss worked exactly the same way? So, a bit like being on the edge of the pool, you're thinking, I need to feel motivated, I need to feel disciplined, I need to feel ready before I commit. But those feelings won't create action. But action will create those feelings. We got it the wrong way around. It's actually by taking the step forward that your system begins to settle. It's choosing something supportive, even when you don't feel like it. That's what builds momentum. Not because you're forcing it, but because your system is actually experiencing something different. Now, from a like minds perspective, what I'm not suggesting is that you push yourself. It's not about pushing yourself. It's not about trying to override how you feel. It's simply seeing for yourself that feelings don't need to come first. You don't need to solve your thinking. You don't need to be in the perfect mindset before you take a step. Because clarity, motivation, readiness, they're not prerequisites. They're actually outcomes. They tend to show up after you've moved, not before. Now, the reasons for waiting still feel real. And that's because the feelings that you experience, the feelings of not being ready, can be very strong. And you can hear this in your thoughts. This isn't the right time. I'll do it properly later. I don't want to mess up again. They're all thoughts that are going on in your mind. And when those thoughts show up, they can look as though they're true. But what's really important, and it's an underlying aspect of like minds, is they're still just thoughts. They're not instructions. You don't need to resolve them. You don't need to follow them before you take the first step, the next step. And what's often really important about this is that we underestimate the power of small steps. And we do that because they don't look dramatic. They don't feel like big transformations. But one of the things that's really important about them is they interrupt the pattern of waiting. They create movement, and movement changes your experience. And it's not because you're doing something perfectly, but it's because you're by acting, by moving, you're showing your system something new. It's experiencing something new. And it can be a very simple thing like choosing a meal that supports you in what you're doing without having to overthink it. It could be just going for a short walk, even when you don't feel motivated. It could be, when you think you need something, but you pause before you react. Um, and you're not trying to control everything. Now, these are all small things, but they're significant because each one shifts the direction slightly. And over time, those small shifts accumulate, they add up, they become something much, much bigger. So the key thing that um, I want you to take from this video is you don't need to feel ready. You don't need the perfect mindset. Everything doesn't have to be lined up. You can just take a step. And you can take that step in the middle of a lot of uncertainty and let the feeling then follow. So try this. Just notice, where are you waiting to feel ready? And that could be about changing your diet regime, your meal plan. It could be um, waiting before you start an exercise program or signing up to a gym. It could be anything like that. So instead of trying to change how you feel, just take one small step. One small step. Nothing dramatic, nothing huge, and don't feel that you need to force it. Make something or do something that's really gentle, just taking you in the right direction, and then notice what happens. Because often in that small step, that bit of movement, you might find something begins to settle straight away, and you're not really doing very much, but you get a different sense. Um, and you might notice that you begin to see things a bit more clearly, or how change is actually working. Um, it's so important not to think that everything has got to be absolutely perfect before you step forward. It's in fact the messiness, stepping forward into the messiness and always being able to move, that's absolutely crucial. Thanks very much.